Hey everybody, Spider32 here, and this is going to be a continuation of my last video concerning nihilism. With that being said, let us begin. What about the races of humans? And before I get any of you saying race doesn't really exist shouting out at me, what if there was a virus that infected Norway and pretty soon spread to every Norwegian? What if due to the symbiosis of an evolution of intestinal flora or the microbiotic life in our guts that controls 71% of our immune system, this virus evolved to live in perfect harmony with the Norwegian people and laid as an internally harmless and dormant virus, doing no harm to Norwegians. But what if it were discovered that the Japanese people, due to their ever so slightly different genetics and intestinal flora, all of them came into contact with those Norwegians, lost their fertility with no cure, and thus could never have children, and exposed to this virus, brought to them by the Norwegians? Would it be would it be tolerant or racist or immoral for Japan, whose people will now be facing extinction, to lock down their borders, forbidding Norwegian immigration? Again, the virus causes no suffering, death, or discomfort, just the inability to breed children. Should the immigration privilege of the Norwegians trump the right to continued survival of the Japanese people? What if the Norwegians have offered what if the Norwegians offered to have babies on behalf of the Japanese and then surrender the offspring to the Japanese couple that ordered a baby? The Japanese would still get the parents, but those children would be tall, round-eyed, pale white Norwegians, not children who look like them and their parents and family. For those who say the Japanese have already continued life as genetically Japanese, this genetically Japanese people ending Norwegian immigration privilege for the sake of self-preservation would be a morally justifiable thing for the Japanese. For those of you who say that, I ask, what about all the brown-skinned people pouring into Norway? Should people such as the Middle Eastern Muslims be denied immigration to Norway on the grounds that Norway has become so saturated with non-white, non-Norwegians that pretty soon racial mixing alone will contaminate the genetics of the Norwegians, thereby leading to their extinction? But locking down the borders to preserve their genetics is immoral? For those of you who would answer that neither the Norwegians nor the Japanese have any right to lock down their borders and deprive any group of people of their migration privilege for the purpose of preserving their own race, because there is no such thing as race. For those of you that hold that opinion, I say, okay. But what if I took one race of bear, moved them to another bear territory, so that those two endangered breeds intermated, producing one new racial mixture, at the expense of forever destroying the other two breeds? Any objections? No. Oh, okay. Would this plan of mine be immoral? What if I took all the breeds, races of dog, and moved their mating choices to make sure every breed produced offspring with a breed other than its own, thereby forever removing all dog breeds except one new breed that would come from the racial mixture? Is this immoral? Is telling a lie immoral? Typically, we say it is, but is telling a lie to spare someone their feelings immoral? Is telling a lie to save someone's life immoral? Is telling a lie to save your own life immoral? Is telling a lie to avoid getting beat up immoral? Is telling a lie to get out of being spanked immoral? Is telling a lie to get a raise immoral? If any one of those scenarios is immoral, but another is moral, what is the mechanism? What is the basis for the difference? And this mechanism, this exception must be universally applicable in all other scenarios too, right? Is stealing immoral? Is stealing from a person who stole that item from someone else immoral? If we say okay, if we say it's okay to take something that doesn't belong to you when that thing also doesn't belong to the person you're stealing from by virtue of the fact so they stole it, then I can embezzle from an insurance company that took my grandmother's monthly payments for decades. yet weasel their way out of paying for their hip replacement and call it morally justified act of stealing, is killing a person who killed a person immoral, is punching a person for punching a person immoral. If one cannot be justified and the other can, what's the difference? What's the difference maker? And is that difference maker universally applicable? And if both are moral, then I can steal from a company, do harm to the company that has exploited workers, possibly ruin nations with its exploitation, war, profiteering. If it is immoral for me to steal, in all these cases, what about if a comet hits the Earth, kills off everyone, and I'm the last human on Earth? Can I walk into a store and take something without paying? If so, this would be acknowledgement that morality is subjective, not objective. Is homosexuality immoral? The religious right sure thinks so. But but is heterosexuality immoral? I want to know why heterosexuality isn't even being brought into question. Although to be fair, sex outside of marriage in the eyes of some is immoral. So heterosexuality is by default an immoral act, unless it is purified by the ritual of marriage to wash away its immorality. If we were to ask, but why doesn't homosexuality get its purification ritual in the eyes of the religious right? We are told homosexuality is immoral because it is unnatural. Okay, cheese whiz is unnatural. Is cheese whiz immoral? Is eating it immoral? We are told homosexuality is unhealthy. Okay, somebody was watching my stuff, but okay. Well, I don't know what that actually is. Although the ridiculously high rate of AIDS does lend some credit to this. But the high rate of a heart attack from obesity is pretty alarming. So is diabetes. Diabetes from obesity. So is obesity immoral? Should fat people not be protesting gay marriage? Should gays be protesting Dunkin' Donuts to wage war on obesity, which threatens the moral fabric of our society? I fully understand homosexuality is unnatural. The evolutionary reason for sex for a sex drive is to inspire, lead to copulation between the sexes of the same species to produce offspring. Sexual desires that cannot lead to offspring are thus unnatural. Okay, I get that, but again, is cheese whiz immoral? People sucking on rescue inhalers is unnatural. Are asthmatics immoral? Wheelchairs unnatural? Wheelchairs are unnatural. Is being in a wheelchair immoral? Voluntary celibacy is unnatural. Does this make Catholic priests immoral? Think about that. A life of voluntary celibacy is unnatural, and it's part of a job description, the religious vow undertaken by the priest. Then what we have is a man, by virtue of his faith, committing sexual immorality and castigating others for homosexual immorality. Hey, is hypocrisy immoral? If so, Father O'Brien, it's two strikes. If a person strangles someone because they were angry, we say he's evil. If he strangled someone because he was in a car accident and was confused, we remove the label of evil. Because the man in a car accident had his brain temporarily altered by concussion, we remove the label evil. But if he were born with a psychological illness that made him go around strangling people, do we still apply the label of evil? If so, then it couldn't be argued that all acts of immorality come from ignorance or genetic predisposition, i.e., mental illness, and thus all acts of immorality are evil. I insist evil is a cause for action. It is a label given to people for action. I'm not asking, is it legal for a human in any of those three circumstances to strangle? I'm asking, is it moral? Moral here means good, meaning good, or not, or just not evil. If we say any of these three circumstances, he's not being evil, then motive and circumstances, the mechanism, the deciding factor if you're moral or evil. It's merely the amount of intent that intention is based upon the knowledge of the situation. Such as a pet owner giving their dog poison to make it die slowly and painfully versus a pet owner who gives their dog Tylenol to ease the pain after a broken leg. Kill the dog because Tylenol will shut down its liver. We call one evil and the other ignorant, as in he did not have the proper understanding of the consequences to his actions. If ignorance can justify otherwise evil and moral behavior, is it fair to argue that a person can commit any atrocity so long as they believe the ends justify the means? Simply due to their ignorance of the situation, is government tyranny no longer immoral? If the governing body believes that the ruler of the people is in the best interest, is it the people that they govern? Is it parent abuse? Parents' abuses are perfectly moral so long as they themselves are convinced that their abusive actions are warranted discipline for the greater good of the child's development and are committing these horribly abusive acts out of love. If this makes their actions moral, remember, not legal, moral, then it's taking the children away from them immoral. As I said, I do not believe in morality, at least not objective morality. Objective morality would have to have an inflatable. In, Objective morality would have to have an inflatable being to justify the existence of an objective moral. Otherwise, morality would be based on popular consensus. If 99% of people believe blank is immoral, then it is because society said so. In which case, morality is a fashion trend, which wearing bell bottoms to this day in Asia is immoral because it is socially no longer socially approved of. Germans killing Jews in the 1930s was totally moral because it was a popular culture trend. Separating drinking fountains from blacks and whites in the 1950s was perfectly a moral value because it was a popular one. And a woman calling herself a rape victim when she regrets her consent is moral because it's totally in vogue. And if killing the non-believers is common practice, then it must be moral now? On the topic of God as the maker of morality, first, there is no God, trust me on this. There really isn't. Therefore, your God-backed morals are immoral because they're based on a lie. And of course, basing a system of values on a work of fiction and pressuring others to conform to the system is somehow moral. If we examine the Christian God, he has committed genocide, murder, rape, the existence of eternal suffering. If you believe the passages that talk about gnashing of teeth, hellfire, brimstone, damnation, as applying to all those who do not enter the kingdom of heaven, he created humans, he gives them an instinctive nature to do what he calls sin, and then threatens to eternally punish them for them. Wow, what a sick fucker. An omnipotent being whose ego is so fragile he requires constant praise and worship, and he is so desperate and needy he will force you to worship him on threat of eternal damnation. If God is real, then we can say God's actions and commandments meant to kill firstborn and make animal sacrifices, cannibalize thy family, and rape women and take them as wives against their will is totally moral because it's God and God has a special right and can make exceptions for anyone at that time and his own and its own whim. I find it interesting that Hitler is called evil for killing a mere 6 million people. God is perfect for killing everyone but Noah and his family. If genocide, rape, and murder Yeah. Are the actions of God and God is good? Then is it good to follow in the behaviors of God? If God's behavior is bad when humans do it, but good when He does it, then to be good means to be an unlike God. But let's be honest, the Bible commands and forbids everything. It tells you to kill people, and then tells you not to kill. It tells you to stone people, then it tells you only he without sin may cast a stone, while also saying no one is without sin. Ultimately, the Bible endorses everything and thus endorses nothing. You, the individual, pick and choose. You, the individual, pick and choose which parts of the Bible you personally identify with. You ignore, deny, and justify whatever mental gymnastics it takes. The parts of the Bible you're not following. And you will stuff your face with pork while condemning homosexuality as a sin. All is said and done, your so-called moral system, which merely your own personal opinions, being validated for your cherry-picking scripture, which now acts as an echo chamber for yourself. God is merely a code word for your own ego. And so we're right back to a thing of moral or immoral because you say so. Now, where does morality come from? There's this notion that some things are right and some things are wrong. These concepts change from person to person, but nonetheless, the very notion that a thing can be good or bad is a human thing. So where does it come from? Same place. All things that are human come from evolution. Herd animals, the herd humans are herd animals, or maybe the term is pack animals. I really don't remember. I really don't remember the difference in those two descriptors. Rather than being solitary hunters, humans gain advantage by being in groupings. Collectives, such as tribes, gangs called society, in order for individuals to coexist. An instinct must be put into place. An instinct must be put into place to act as a social lubricant. In order to be part of that society, you must part with some degree. You must part with some degree of individualism. Morality is merely an empathy and guilt-based system of how to interact with others in a group. The golden rule is the best deception of this behavior. Do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. You would not approve of someone just taking your stuff, then you yourself should not take the belongings of others. Although with some resources it may have been wiser to share. Sometimes you will part with what's rightfully yours to give a person who is more needy. This instinct is based on investment. If you give a man one of your blankets, then when are you hungry and he has additional food? He will remember your kindness and repay it. Morality is a survival instinct, as, it, as is being a part of a collective. Morality is derived from collectivism. Again, in order to be part of a collective, you must make some sacrifices of your individuality. You must have with you cooperative skills. These cooperative skills must involve respecting people's personal space, right of self-determination, and property rights, all the while realizing sometimes you will have to make sacrifices for the team. It is learning to put away your selfish desires to give others respect, the respect you'd like them to have for you. It means knowing that a society, in order to function, is going to have rule. It's going to have rules. And rules meaning you can't just do whatever you feel like doing. And again, the key to morality is empathy, being able to understand and identify with the needs and feelings of others, and guilt for violating others in ways you would not have liked to have been violated or cheated. It's partially about shedding some of the narcissistic skin of individualism to make sacrifices for the team, who will also shed their selfish individualism and make sacrifices for you. Morality is a social lubricant to aid in team cooperation. After all, if you're not part of a society, then you really can't commit a moral act. If you live thousands of miles away from others, you can't exactly kill them because they're not there. You can't steal from people. You can't steal from people because no one is around. You can't lie, cheat, or harm others because there are no others. So when traditionalists want to refer to me as a nihilist, then they're typically coming from a position of conservatism and libertarianism, ergo against collectivism. It's just a hilarious contradiction. Again, morality is a bunch of do's and don'ts. of living a collective. But the thing is, these do's and don'ts are not always agreed upon, even by well-meaning selfless individuals. There simply there simply is no universal objective morality. At the end of the day, it really comes down to a bunch of opinions that differ from individual to individual. I also want to include that morality goes hand in hand with guilt, which brings us back to the sociopath. As I said earlier, sociopath tends to like guilt while exploiting it in others. Personally, I think this. I, Personally, this is practically the only quality I look for in a person before determining that they're a sociopath. Because when you see someone lack guilt but try to manipulate and shame others, making it to make them feel guilty, they will always have they will always have practically every other sociopathic trait. I seldom ever use the word sociopath. Simply, I simply do what simply to do what a vague, misused, and convoluted concept that is. Also, it's too similar and often indistinguishable from psychopaths, to which there are two types: found in, that found in psychopathy and that found in criminal psychology. Psycho- uh, there, it's too similar and often indistinguishable from psychopaths, to which there are two types: found in psychology and that found in criminal psychology. Furthermore, psychopath, while having its origins in psychology, isn't an actual diagnosis in the DSM. The closest to DSM comes is a personality disorder called antisocial personality disorder. Psychopathy is a personality spectrum, meaning everyone has a little bit of psychopath in them, in the same way that everyone has a little bit of greed in them, a little bit of dishonesty in them, and so on. Back to the guilt. People who often attempt to shame and guilt others tend to lack gain, well, shame and guilt themselves. It is this, and this alone, my experience, which tend to be the foundation of sociopathy. I am wary and distrusting of those who I insist I am supposed to feel guilt, sorrow, or concern over anything, or concern over something. For example, I don't have any emotion when thinking about terror. I don't have any emotion when thinking about the terrorist attack on 9/11. It didn't emotionally affect me then or now. What I distrust is the person who exploits this tragedy. A few years ago, there was a video of someone. A few years ago, there's a video someone did of all these beauty gurus and vloggers who were making their 9/11 commemoration video. And this person made this collection of these videos and pointed out how insincere they were being and how lovely they had ads plastered on their videos. In other words, they were using the 9/11 tragedy as an excuse to make money, providing no real concern, no interesting insight, and just embarrassingly going through the motions to get their 5-minute video out there. To me, this is psychopathic behavior because it is emotionally exploitative and deceitful. It's one thing to be, it's one thing to not be concerned about with 9/11. It's another to pretend to be concerned, and yet a whole nother ballgame to exploit it for cash, or use it as a political lever on political topics not relevant to a 9/11 terrorist attack. People who tell me I should feel sorrow or empathy for 9/11 strike me as manipulative. Strike me as manipulative people. See, some of my emotions are not governed by your personal expectations about how others ought to feel, you fucking control freak. Think you can take a step back and not dictate my emotions for me? Thanks. This is up there with all those. This is up there with all the. Won't someone figure the children, as I pointed out, and give examples of in a previous video. People who hide behind won't someone figure the children are not at all concerned about children. They merely wish to control they really wish to control how others live their lives, and are merely hiding behind the excuse of children. This is psychopathic because it is deceitful, manipulative, and It brings on human guilt response. People who frequently make appeals to emotion are also being psychopathic rather than trying to get through to you by means of truth and logic, they are manipulating your feelings, preying on empathy and guilt. Likewise, people who continuously insist that you share your beliefs, agree with them, support their cause, they should be branded as immoral are typically psychopaths. Appeals to morality as a dumb man's excuse when he has no argument. It is also an effort to say, morally, you have to agree with me or you're being immoral. In closing, I am a nihilist, and I don't trust those who use the notions of morality as a crutch to prop up their weak arguments and demonize those who disagree. I believe whose I believe those whose speeches rely heavily on the notion of morality are manipulative snakes that I would caution you to distrust. All communication is an effort to manipulate your actions or opinions. I speak, therefore I manipulate, but to do so without deception, I make no pretense of being a good person. I will stab you in the front, not the back. Okay, I think that's going to be it for my video. If you have any, if you have any, if you have any comments, please. If you have anything to share with me, please like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Spider 32, and I'm done. See you later, guys.